During an apparently calm patrol, the police officer and her loyal dog kept digging in the middle of the park. Intrigued, she helped him and found a blood-stained badge belonging to an officer everyone had given up on finding. Upon recognizing the missing name, the officer felt a chill down her spine and froze. Those who witnessed the discovery were left speechless, unsure of what else lay buried there. In the early hours of a quiet summer morning, the first rays of sunlight draped Hollowdale Park with a gentle warmth. Dew glistened on every blade of grass, and the hush of dawn was broken only by birds greeting the new day. Joggers would soon arrive, children would laugh on the swings, and families would spread their blankets for picnics. But in a far corner of this peaceful setting, near a half-forgotten oak tree, a scruffy mixed-breed dog named Bingo was tirelessly digging into the earth. He had been at it for days, returning to the same spot even when shooed away by the park's maintenance crew or curious onlookers. No one seemed to understand why he persisted, yet his determination never wavered. To most people, Bingo was just another stray. His mottled brown and white coat bore the signs of living on the streets: patched fur, a few scars, and a slim frame that spoke of uncertain meals. Yet there was a kindness in his eyes that the local children noticed whenever they tried to pet him. He would wag his tail with a gentle sway, neither retreating nor fully embracing their touch. Instead, he seemed perpetually fixated on that section of park ground beneath the oak, as if a secret called out to him from below. Officer Lily Patterson of the Hollowdale Police Department first heard about Bingo from a group of teenagers who hung out by the skate ramps. They joked about a crazy dog digging for treasure near the old oak. But something in their laughter, an undercurrent of curiosity mingled with unease, made Lily take note. She was new on the beat, assigned to the local precinct after her promotion. Determined to make a difference, she decided to check out the commotion herself. That same afternoon, she strolled over to the oak tree and found Bingo pawing at the ground with single-minded focus. Lily crouched a short distance away, observing the dog. His nails were muddy, and his ears twitched at the slightest noise. Yet he hardly glanced at her, too absorbed in scraping away layer after layer of dirt. She noticed that the earth was already disturbed, revealing shallow holes that Bingo seemed determined to deepen. What was he after? Food scraps? A hidden bone? Or was this some instinctual behavior with no real logic behind it? A memory stirred in Lily's mind. Her mother once told her animals often sense things people cannot. Maybe Bingo sensed something buried that no one else suspected. Carefully, Lily approached, extending one hand. Bingo paused his digging and glanced at her with cautious curiosity. His tail gave a hesitant wag. Lily pulled a treat from her pocket, something she carried ever since she started patrolling the local neighborhoods, and offered it gently. Bingo sniffed the morsel before taking it with surprising delicacy. Then, as if acknowledging her kindness, he nudged her palm with his nose, but within seconds, he returned to his excavation, as though compelled by an invisible force. That evening, Lily recounted the scene to her partner at the station. Sergeant Wilcox raised an eyebrow but shrugged it off, calling the dog's behavior odd but not exactly criminal. Yet Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something about Bingo's obsession mattered more than anyone realized. Over the following week, reports began to trickle in. A jogger complained that the dog nearly tripped her as he darted toward the oak. A father reported that Bingo growled at him when he tried to fill one of the holes. Maintenance workers found fresh dirt scattered every morning, as if Bingo had returned in the middle of the night to continue his project. With each incident, Lily's curiosity deepened. She pulled up local records, searching for anything peculiar about that specific corner of the park. Although she found notes on old landscaping plans and a rumor about a time capsule from decades ago, nothing substantial emerged. But the more she learned, the more convinced she became that Bingo's relentless effort pointed to something hidden, something the city had overlooked. It was on a humid Tuesday afternoon that Lily decided to investigate in earnest. She arrived at Hollowdale Park in plain clothes and quietly observed Bingo's routine. For nearly an hour he circled the oak tree, sniffing the ground, whining softly, and pawing at the same spot he had excavated so many times. Deciding it was time to act, Lily fetched a small shovel from the trunk of her car. With gentle coaxing and a few more treats, she managed to guide Bingo a short distance away, ensuring he wouldn't be underfoot while she dug. Then, with the dog watching intently, Lily plunged the shovel into the soft soil, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. She expected to find some random trash or an old toy, but every downward thrust revealed something that wasn't just dirt. Small, brittle fragments of what looked like bone. A jolt of adrenaline surged through Lily. Her training kicked in, and she carefully extracted a few pieces, examining them under the harsh midday light. They were definitely bone fragments, but from what? Human remains? Animal? She glanced at Bingo, who whined softly as though urging her to keep going. Lily grabbed her phone and called for backup, requesting a forensic team to cordon off the area. Word spread quickly through the station, and before long, Sergeant Wilcox arrived with reinforcements. Onlookers gathered at a distance, their hushed conversations blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. For years, nothing truly dramatic had happened in this peaceful park, but that day changed everything. By evening, the entire Hollowdale Police Department was involved in what now looked like a potential crime scene. Forensic specialists descended upon the dig site, setting up floodlights and carefully sifting through the soil. Bingo, meanwhile, hovered nearby. Lily tried to keep him calm, grateful that he seemed to sense the seriousness of the situation and never strayed far. The specialists unearthed more fragments, meticulously cataloging each piece. In whispered discussions, they speculated about how long the remains might have been buried there. A day, a year, decades. As the hours wore on, local news reporters caught wind of the unusual discovery. Camera crews arrived, broadcasting glimpses of the oak tree in the taped-off area. They also captured the sight of a lone dog with soulful eyes, watching every movement, as though he had a personal stake in the outcome. By midnight, rumors were swirling. Was Hollowdale Park hiding a dark secret? The next morning, the forensic team confirmed a shocking truth. The bones were human. Further examination indicated multiple sets of remains, some possibly dating back more than 20 years. Hollowdale Park had never been considered a site of tragedy, let alone a dumping ground for bodies. As the investigation deepened, Lily found herself at the center of a mystery that rattled the entire city. Who were these victims? How had they ended up under the old oak tree? And what drove Bingo to uncover them now, after all this time? The media quickly latched onto the story, framing Bingo as a hero dog who refused to let the dead remain forgotten. Yet, as Lily delved into cold case files and consulted with detectives from neighboring counties, a pattern began to emerge, one that hinted at a serial killer who had operated undetected for decades. With each revelation, fear gripped Hollowdale. Once a haven of picnics and laughter, the park now evoked fascination. Parents pulled children close and joggers changed routes to avoid the oak. Through it all, Bingo stayed near Lily, his vigilance a constant reminder of the mystery. Were these bones his motive, or was he driven by a deeper call for justice? One certainty remained. This was the beginning of a case that would rock the city. Barely half a day had passed since the discovery in Hollowdale Park, and the entire police department was in a frenzy. Officers who once dismissed stray dogs and minor park complaints now pored over skeletal fragments, while forensics raced to determine how many victims lay beneath the old oak. Lily Patterson woke to a knot in her stomach, haunted by the image of Bingo's focused digging. She recalled the exact moment she unearthed the first bone shard, how her heart had thundered with fear and astonishment. Now, each new revelation threatened to deepen a mystery that had already seized the city's attention. Early that morning, she arrived at the precinct to find Sergeant Wilcox hunched over a series of missing persons reports pinned to a bulletin board. Photographs of men and women, some who vanished decades ago, were arranged in grim rows. Wilcox glanced up when Lily entered, exhaustion etched in his features. "They're from different eras," he said, tapping several photographs. "But the location is too specific for coincidence. We may be dealing with someone who used the park as a personal graveyard over many years." Lily's pulse quickened. If there was a serial killer at large, the entire city was at risk. Outside, reporters clustered by the station steps, clamoring for updates. A rumor was circulating that Bingo, the stray dog, had single-handedly cracked open a years-long mystery, and some even called him a four-legged detective. Lily couldn't help but smile wryly at the headlines. She'd seen how quickly the public turned sensational stories into urban legends, yet behind the media frenzy lay genuine anxiety. Families of the missing wondered if they'd finally learn the fate of their loved ones. The city's mayor demanded swift answers, and residents who frequented Hollowdale Park were shaken to realize how easily evil could hide in plain sight. Late that afternoon, Lily found Bingo curled up under her desk at the station. One of the officers had managed to coax him inside with fresh water and a little food. Despite the noise, the ringing phones, and the constant bustle of uniforms passing by, Bingo lay there calmly, his eyes occasionally flicking toward Lily as if seeking reassurance. She knelt down to pet him, remembering how determined he'd been in the park. Now, a flicker of guilt tugged at her. Was it right to keep him here instead of letting him roam free? But the captain insisted Bingo stay, citing safety concerns. Sergeant Wilcox poked his head into her workspace. "Got a minute? We've identified one of the sets of remains. Matches a missing person from 1998, a traveling salesman last seen leaving a roadside motel near the highway. Forensics suggests cause of death was blunt force trauma, though the bones are in bad shape." Lily rose, heart pounding. If they had a confirmed identity, that might lead them to a suspect, or at least a timeline. "Any leads on who might have wanted him dead?" she asked. Wilcox sighed. "So far, nothing concrete, but we're pulling old records. Something's bound to surface eventually." While the department scrambled through dated police logs, Lily decided to take Bingo for a quick walk around the station's block. She needed air, and judging by Bingo's restless pacing, he did too. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, residents waved or stopped to ask about the park investigation. Some wanted to thank Bingo personally. Others expressed fear that a killer might still be out there. Lily offered reassurances even as her own uncertainties lingered. Amid the swirl of city life, the dog stayed close as though tethered to her by an invisible bond. In that moment, Lily realized Bingo trusted her. She returned to the precinct resolved to pursue every tenuous lead. Over the next few hours, she dove into the archives, scanning yellowed newspapers and digital databases. A pattern emerged. Random disappearances scattered through the years, each with no obvious suspect. Some victims were locals, others were passers-by. All ended up beneath that oak. By dusk, Lily's eyes burned from staring at the screen, but her determination was fiercer than ever. At closing time, Sergeant Wilcox pulled her aside. "We can't solve this overnight. Go home, get rest." Lily nodded, though sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford, not now. As Lily was locking up her desk, Bingo whined softly, nudging her ankle. His eyes were wide, reflecting the fluorescent lights overhead. She knelt to scratch behind his ears. "I guess you need a place tonight," she murmured. "You can't stay here alone." Part of her worried about taking him home. What if he wandered off or felt uneasy indoors? Still, she couldn't bear the thought of leaving him behind. And so, for the first time, Bingo climbed into Lily's car, curling up on the passenger seat. When she pulled away from the station, she felt a strange relief, even a glimmer of hope. Her small apartment wasn't fancy, but it was clean and cozy. She spread old blankets on the floor to make a makeshift bed for Bingo. He sniffed around cautiously, tail wagging in short, hesitant sweeps. Lily set out a bowl of water and rummaged through her fridge, finding leftover chicken. When she offered it, Bingo ate politely, occasionally pausing to watch her. She could almost sense gratitude in his gaze. Later, as Lily prepared for bed, images of bones and missing person photos flooded her mind, making rest impossible. But every time she glanced at the living room, seeing Bingo curled up calmly, she felt less alone. Morning arrived sooner than she'd have liked. Lily found Bingo awake and quietly surveying the apartment, as though memorizing every detail. She brewed coffee, fed him a small breakfast, and together they headed back to the station. The tension in the building was palpable. Another set of remains had been identified overnight, belonging to a teenager who disappeared 5 years earlier. The local news had already begun spinning theories about a park predator. Lily and Wilcox met behind closed doors to discuss their next move. With each new victim identified, the urgency intensified. They needed a breakthrough before panic consumed the city. By mid-afternoon, Lily and a small team returned to the Oak, roping off a wider perimeter for a more thorough examination. The media hovered at a respectable distance, but their long lenses captured every moment. In the thick summer heat, Bingo trotted circles around the site, occasionally pausing to whine. More forensic experts arrived, setting up ground-penetrating radar to search for further anomalies. The initial scans raised alarms. There were likely more remains underground. Hollowdale trembled under the weight of this fresh horror. Lily's heart ached for each unknown victim, and the families that had waited in vain, their hopes turning to grief. Questions mounted, each one heavier than the last. Who was responsible for this monstrous act? How had they managed to remain undetected for so long? And why did Bingo seem so certain that the Oak harbored terrible secrets? Late in the day, Lily stepped away from the clamorous scene and found a quiet spot beneath a smaller tree. Bingo followed, leaning against her leg. She stroked his fur, her gaze drifting to the taped-off patch of earth. "We'll find whoever did this," she whispered, voice trembling with determination. "We owe it to them. All those souls you refused to let stay hidden." Even as twilight settled over the park, Lily could not tear herself away. The forensics lights cast shadows, and Bingo's silhouette merged with hers upon the grass. In that merging of shapes, Lily recognized an unspoken bond they now shared. Together they had uncovered a truth, and together they would fight for justice. With resolve burning bright, she stood and guided Bingo toward the waiting patrol car, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. A pale haze clung to the Hollowdale skyline when Lily Patterson arrived at the precinct the next morning. Although it was barely dawn, the station buzzed with frenetic energy. Officers huddled over new evidence while phones rang incessantly. In a corner, Bingo lay on a small blanket someone had placed beside Lily's desk. He raised his head at her entrance and offered a gentle thump of his tail, a small gesture that steadied the anxiety pooling in her chest. Lily gave him a thankful pat before heading straight for the bulletin board, where Sergeant Wilcox was pinning fresh crime scene photos in neat rows. Across the board, images of the oak tree in Hollowdale Park now featured neon markers indicating newly discovered remains. The ground-penetrating radar showed more anomalies, Wilcox said, running a hand over the back of his neck. "We could be looking at half a dozen victims, maybe more." Lily glanced at Bingo as if his quiet, watchful presence offered courage. "So we have a serial killer who's used the park as a dumping ground for decades," she muttered, the gravity of it all pressing down on her. Wilcox nodded. We've called in a specialist, Detective Marcela Suarez from Coldwater County. She's cracked some big cases. Maybe she'll spot something we're missing. Just then, a tall woman in a navy suit strode through the precinct doors, scanning the room with sharp brown eyes. Wilcox waved her over. Detective Suarez, this is Officer Patterson, who first found the remains, he said. And that, he added, pointing to the dog, is Bingo. Suarez crouched, studying Bingo's calm face. He's your partner? Lily flushed slightly. In a way, yes. Without him, we might never have discovered any of this. Suarez rose, slipping a binder from her satchel. I've read the preliminary reports. Quite a story. Let's hope we can write an ending. They settled around a scuffed conference table, coffee cups in hand, while Bingo lay at Lily's feet. Suarez opened her binder, revealing a meticulous array of notes and clipped newspaper articles. Over the last 25 years, she began, there have been sporadic disappearances in a 50-mile radius. People passing through or folks with few close connections. Usually no bodies were found. She tapped a photo of a middle-aged woman with curly hair. This is Linda Kershaw. Disappeared in 2004. No local ties, just passing through for business. She's never been located. Lily recognized the woman's face from a missing person file she had studied late the previous night. You think she's under that oak too? Suarez nodded grimly. It's a possibility. As the team reviewed each file, Lily felt a chill. The victims seemed completely random. Different ages, races, life stories, yet all vanished with no trace. Bingo let out a soft whine, as if reacting to the solemn atmosphere. Wilcox leaned forward, voice taut. Whoever did this must have known the park well. How else hide bodies for so long? We checked old caretaker rosters, but nothing conclusive emerged. Suarez frowned. Sometimes a killer returns to the same place because it feels safe, or because it's personally significant. We might be dealing with someone who either worked in or around the park, or someone who's confident enough that no one would dig there. The hours passed in a blur, a steady cycle of phone calls and leads that ran cold. By midday, Lily felt the ache of frustration seep into her bones. Mayor Randall demanded a press conference, pressuring the department for a timeline. The city's collective anxiety had ballooned overnight. Parents in tears dialed the station to ask if their missing loved ones could be among the dead. Concerned residents demanded reassurance that the killer was no longer active, yet no one knew how to answer with certainty. Lily caught herself staring at Bingo, who lay with his muzzle on his paws. He had done more to unveil this horror than all their combined efforts over decades. We owe it to him not to fail now, she thought. Soon after lunch, Lily, Suarez, and Wilcox drove to Hollowdale Park. Media vans lined the streets, reporters hovering like moths around a floodlight. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze, encircling the old oak and several yards beyond. Bingo jumped out of the patrol car and led the way, as if drawn by an invisible thread. The forensics tent stood starkly white against the lush green lawn, filled with the hum of machinery scanning soil layers. Glancing around, Lily noted how quickly a place of picnics and laughter had turned grim. Residents with strollers paused, staring silently at the commotion. Detective Suarez exchanged introductions with the forensic experts. Any updates? She asked, scanning the equipment. One technician removed her mask. We've located 5 sites of interest and removed skeletal fragments from at least 4. Preliminary estimates suggest the bodies were interred between 2 and 20 years ago. We'll keep searching. Lily swallowed hard, imagining how many nights the city had slept peacefully, unaware of the atrocities just beneath the surface. She knelt to check on Bingo, who sniffed the perimeter, occasionally whining at spots the radar had yet to confirm. "This dog is unstoppable," she murmured. Suarez overheard and walked closer. "Animals sense more than we do sometimes. Maybe he's picking up residual sense." Lily nodded, her thoughts whirling. News cameras panned as Lily and Suarez moved deeper into the taped-off zone. Lily tried to block out the flash of lenses, but the knowledge that half the city was watching weighed on her. "We need a statement," Wilcox reminded them quietly. "The mayor insists." Lily steeled herself. She had never been fond of the spotlight, yet she understood the importance of calming public fears. She stepped behind a makeshift podium where microphones sprouted like metal weeds. Clearing her throat, she began, "The Hollowdale Police Department is working tirelessly to identify all remains found in the park and bring justice to any victims. We ask the public for patience and cooperation." Cameras clicked. "We cannot confirm exact numbers yet. However, we believe these crimes spanned many years. If you or anyone you know has information, anything suspicious you recall, please reach out." She paused, her gaze lowering to Bingo. "I also want to acknowledge that we discovered the first remains thanks to a stray dog. We're calling him Bingo. Without him, this investigation might never have begun." The crowd erupted in murmurs. A reporter raised his hand. "Officer Patterson, do you suspect an active serial killer?" Lily exchanged a glance with Suarez. "We are exploring every possibility," Lily said calmly, though her chest constricted at the implication that the killer might still roam free. With no further immediate updates, she ended the briefing. Stillness followed, a lull before the next wave of questions. Well after dusk, Lily and Suarez convened in the park's old ranger station, a small hut with a single flickering bulb. Outside, Bingo curled up on an abandoned welcome mat. Inside, they spread out archival documents beneath the weak light. Wilcox soon joined them, dropping a thick folder on the wooden desk. "Background checks on everyone who's worked at Hollowdale Park in the last 30 years, he explained, flipping through the pages. "Plenty of staff have come and gone. Groundskeepers, concession workers, rangers. Maybe one name stands out." Suarez frowned. "We'll have to cross-reference each with local arrest records, see if any served time or had protective orders. Even a single clue might unravel this web." They worked in hushed focus until the overhead bulb crackled, warning them it might go out. Wilcox reached for a spare flashlight. "This place gives me the creeps at night," he muttered. Lily understood the sentiment. Shadows seemed longer here, history staining every corner. Outside, Bingo stirred, letting out a low-pitched bark. Lily pushed the door open. "You okay, boy?" she called softly, stepping onto the creaking porch. Bingo lifted his head, ears pricked. He stared toward the oak, still illuminated by floodlights, then looked back at Lily. It was as if he was warning her. Something remained undiscovered. Despite her fatigue, Lily felt that surge of determination again. Tomorrow, new digs would begin, and they had to be ready. She returned to the paperwork with fresh resolve, scanning for anything that might fit the pattern of untraceable violence. Seated beside her, Detective Suarez flipped through lists of missing person details, searching for coincidences. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing to a small note about a suspicious man who'd once been spotted loitering near the oak years ago. No name, no charges. Lily jotted it down. A faint lead, but better than none. The night grew deeper, and Wilcox left to arrange more patrols for park security. Lily and Suarez continued, cross-referencing scattered bits of data. Occasionally, Bingo pawed at the door, as though urging them to hurry. By the time they stepped outside, the moon hung high in the sky, and the forensics crew had shut down for the evening. White tarps and equipment sat waiting for dawn. Lily inhaled the damp summer air, grateful for a moment's respite. In the muted glow of streetlights, Bingo brushed against her leg, delivering that wordless comfort she'd come to depend on. Suarez parted ways with Lily near the patrol cars. "Tomorrow we'll dig deeper," she said, voice firm despite her exhaustion. "This case is personal now." Lily nodded, guiding Bingo into her vehicle. The drive back to her apartment was quiet. Not even the radio seemed appropriate. Parked outside her building, Lily gazed at her reflection in the rearview mirror, dark circles under her eyes, worry lines etched across her brow. Yet in Bingo's calm stare, she found reassurance. Upstairs, she made a quick dinner, then settled onto her small couch with a pile of notes. Bingo lay by her feet, occasionally shifting as if to remind her he was there. Despite the comfort of companionship, Lily's mind churned with unsettling possibilities. If the killer was still active, who might be next? Could Bingo sense the presence of evil before the rest of them? She rested a hand on his back. "Tomorrow, we'll try again," she whispered. "We'll find the key." Exhaustion overcame her at last, and Lily dozed off, the lamplight flickering against a sheaf of cold case files. Bingo, ever vigilant, stayed awake a little longer, ears flicking at the night's subtle creaks. Outside, the moon retreated behind clouds, casting the city in shadows. But a silent vow remained. No matter how dark the truth beneath that oak, they would unearth it together. By sunrise on Wednesday, Lily Patterson was already parked outside the Hollowdale precinct, fingertips tight on the steering wheel. Her night's sleep had been shallow, filled with fleeting nightmares of disturbed earth and unidentified bones. Bingo, seated calmly in the passenger seat, gazed at her with quiet concern. She glanced at the dog, exhaled, and mustered a small smile. "All right," she said softly. "Time to see if we can finally get a break in this case." The air smelled of rain, though no drops had fallen yet, and the morning sky hung gray overhead. When Lily led Bingo inside, the station felt heavier than usual. Officers huddled in corners, exchanging murmured updates on the park excavations, while a queue of anxious citizens waited to ask questions about missing family members. Hollowdale's uneasy hush was growing louder with every passing hour. Lily made her way to the conference room, where Detective Suarez and Sergeant Wilcox were bent over a collection of documents spread across a long table. She brushed Bingo gently behind the ears, then took a seat. It was time to see what new leads the overnight shift had uncovered. The first item of business was a set of interviews scheduled with longtime park employees, including a now-retired caretaker named Lionel Crane. Though Lily had read his record front to back, she knew it was essential to speak to him face-to-face. Witness testimony suggested Crane spent decades trimming branches, cleaning litter, and locking up the gates at night. If anyone had noticed something amiss, it might have been him. He arrived promptly at 9, a wiry man in his 70s wearing a threadbare jacket and squinting through thick glasses. Detective Suarez took the lead, guiding him to a quiet interview room while Lily and Wilcox observed from behind a one-way mirror. Bingo, not allowed in the interrogation area, waited by Lily's desk, occasionally lifting his ears as though sensing tension from afar. Inside, Crane appeared uneasy, his gaze darting between Suarez's unwavering stare and the recorder placed on the table. At first, he insisted he knew nothing about bodies in the park, raising his voice in protest. But as the questions pressed deeper, specific dates, odd encounters, his facade cracked. He recalled times when he found the turf near the oak disturbed, lumps of soil where none should be. He thought it might be teenagers digging pranks, or maybe dogs burying things, so he hadn't reported it. He added that 20 years earlier, he swore he saw a lone figure under that tree after midnight, but at the time dismissed it as a trick of the dark. Suarez's expression was unreadable, but Lily sensed the shift in the room's energy. Crane's recollections, albeit vague, hinted that suspicious activity around the oak wasn't new. When Crane was released, Wilcox sighed, stepping out from the observation area. He might be telling the truth. He saw something but never connected the dots. It could mean multiple perpetrators or a single killer returning again and again. Lily rubbed her temples, exhaustion tugging at her. We should cross-reference the time frames Crane mentioned with any missing person spikes. If the timeline matches any of our victims, we'll have more proof that someone used the park repeatedly. Outside the interview room, Bingo peered up at Lily as though confirming they were one step closer. Detective Suarez crouched to pat the dog, remarking on how calm he remained despite the tension. News of Crane's account spread quickly through the station, intensifying the sense of unease. A few officers muttered about how they, too, had walked past that oak countless times without suspecting a thing. Before Lily could grab a sandwich or coffee, a distressed couple arrived with fresh concerns. They'd seen the press conference and now suspected their missing nephew might lie beneath the park soil. Lily took them aside, heart aching as she explained the procedures for DNA matching, how they would be contacted if any remains matched their nephew's profile. Every mention of the oak weighed heavy, a silent testament to the cruelty hidden there. By late afternoon, Lily's mind swirled with potential suspects, park employees, local residents, perhaps even a passing truck driver who chose the site due to easy access. None of it felt concrete. So many opportunities, so few clues. Detective Suarez recommended a deeper dig into old property records. If the killer felt safe burying victims near the oak, maybe it belonged to private land at some point, or there was restricted park access that only select individuals had. Wilcox assembled a team to sift through municipal archives, but many were incomplete, lost to remodeling efforts or floods years before. It was a painstaking process that yielded more frustration than progress. Unwilling to sit idle, Lily volunteered to recheck earlier statements from visitors who claimed to have seen strange lights or heard peculiar noises at night. Most of these accounts had been dismissed as pranks or misunderstandings. Yet in the context of multiple homicides, they now loomed with deeper significance. Even a fleeting glimpse might reveal a pattern, an unusual car model, a figure with a distinct walk, something that had passed unnoticed. While Lily combed through these leads, Bingo never strayed far. He dozed under desks, occasionally waking to trail her as she moved between cubicles. Despite the station's tension, the dog's presence offered a reminder of why they pursued this grim puzzle: to restore dignity to the unnamed dead and protect whoever might be targeted next. That evening, just as Lily considered heading home for a shower and a meal, Sergeant Wilcox approached with a folder clenched in his fist. "We might have something," he said, lowering his voice as though fearful of jinxing the find. Inside were dusty police logs from 15 years ago, describing a string of vandalism complaints. Several times, large patches of grass were torn up at night, always near the oak. Witnesses mentioned a tall man with a limp spotted at the edge of darkness. No arrests were made, no follow-up. The memory made Lily's spine tingle. Had this man been burying more than rubbish in the soil? They cross-referenced the time frames with missing person records. Sure enough, there was a correlation. 2 vanishings aligned with the nights after those vandalism reports. It still wasn't proof, but it was a lead. Their next challenge: who was this tall man with a limp? And did he still wander the park's shadows, or had he vanished like the bodies? Lily's mind buzzed with the dreadful possibility that he could be someone the city knew, an unassuming local who harbored a monstrous secret. Dusk found Lily, Suarez, and Wilcox at a makeshift command post in the precinct, reviewing the day's leads. The tall man with a limp seemed crucial after they unearthed old rumors about an ex-convict who once lived near the park. A dated incident report mentioned neighbors complaining of foul odors on his property, though nothing was proved. While Suarez drafted a request for that man's archived file, Lily fed Bingo, who stayed vigilant by her side. She noticed how his ears twitched whenever the oak was mentioned, as if he felt something deeper in the name. Outside, thunder rumbled, threatening a summer storm. The station grew quiet as Lily and Wilcox scheduled more interviews. Tomorrow they would speak with ex-convicts, question night workers, and ask any citizen who recalled a figure hobbling through the park at odd hours. Despite weariness, Lily sensed a change in the air, a feeling that they were edging closer to exposing whoever had turned Hollowdale Park into a secret graveyard. Her heart pounded with both fear and determination, knowing they held an advantage the killer never expected, a steadfast dog who refused to let darkness remain buried. Each new clue brought them closer still. Barely had Lily managed to lay her notes on the desk the next morning before Sergeant Wilcox came rushing over, holding a printout. "We've found him," Wilcox said, breathless. "Or at least, we've found someone who matches that old description. Tall, slight limp, used to live near the park." He handed Lily the page. A name jumped out at her: Norman Fitch. According to the records, Fitch had been convicted of theft years ago, served a short sentence, and upon release rented a trailer in a rundown neighborhood within walking distance of Hollowdale Park. Lily felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, maybe at long last a real lead. Detective Suarez materialized at Lily's shoulder, scanning the document. "He's had no serious convictions since," she observed, "but that doesn't guarantee he's clean. Any sign he still lives in the area?" Wilcox shook his head. "No recent address on file, might have moved, might be off the grid." Lily looked at Bingo, who'd just lifted his head from his makeshift bed near the office door. "Then we find out," she said. "We have to question him." Soon, Lily and Suarez were driving toward the old trailer park listed in Fitch's file. It was on the outskirts of Hollowdale, past sagging chain-link fences and abandoned lots. The morning fog clung to the uneven roads like ghostly drapery. Bingo rode with them, occasionally sniffing the air through the partially open window. Lily could tell he sensed something new in the tension behind her voice. When they reached the address, all they found was a weed-choked patch of dirt. The trailer was gone. A rusted mailbox leaned precariously by a warped plank of wood that might once have served as a doorstep. Suarez frowned. So much for an easy find. They canvassed the area, knocking on trailer doors and talking to wary neighbors. Most had never heard of Norman Fitch. A few older residents recalled a man who walked with a limp, but they couldn't pinpoint exactly when he left. One woman in a tattered bathrobe mentioned that a quiet fellow named Norm vanished almost a decade earlier. As Lily jotted notes, Bingo waited patiently at her side, capturing occasional glances from curious onlookers. By early afternoon, they'd exhausted every lead. Disappointment gnawed at Lily. Fitch remained a shadow. Returning to the station, they found new chaos. 2 more families had come forward, suspecting their missing relatives might be in the park's makeshift morgue. Forensic tests were pending, but the sense of dread was palpable. Lily guided Bingo to her desk and sat down, rummaging through older logs for any clue about Norman Fitch's life after he left the trailer. Some scribbled notes suggested he'd once worked as a handyman, repairing fences and clearing brush for local homeowners. No official tax forms, no credit history. It was as though he'd slipped into the cracks of the city and vanished. Late in the day, Detective Suarez motioned Lily over to the board, pinned with faces of the missing. "Look here," she said, pointing to 2 photos side by side. Both men disappeared around the time Fitch was last seen. Different backgrounds, but each lived alone. Could Fitch have chosen victims who wouldn't be quickly missed? Lily stared at the photos, men with unremarkable features, short paragraphs detailing how they had minimal family ties. The pattern suggested someone calculating enough to avoid detection for years. She leaned against the wall, rubbing her arms as goosebumps spread. "We need more than speculation," she murmured. A phone rang, cutting through the tension. Wilcox answered, eyebrows lifting. This might be something. A possible sighting of a man with a limp near a warehouse downtown rummaging for scrap metal. Lily's pulse quickened. The location wasn't far from Hollowdale Park, maybe a mile or two. She and Suarez exchanged a glance. "Let's go," Lily said, grabbing her coat. At the last second, she hesitated, wondering if she should leave Bingo behind. But one look at him, ears alert and eyes steady, banished her doubts. He had a knack for sensing crucial turns in this case. They sped downtown, weaving through early evening traffic. The warehouse district loomed in silent rows, marked by rusted cargo doors and flickering streetlights. A musty odor of decaying pallets filled the air. With guns holstered, Lily and Suarez moved carefully among the deserted loading docks. Bingo stayed close, muzzle low, as though ready to detect the faintest clue. A security guard who'd phoned in the tip stood outside a metal gate. He pointed inside. "Saw a fellow limping, carrying a crowbar. When I yelled, he darted off." He shrugged apologetically. Maybe he's still in there, maybe not. Lily and Suarez advanced, scanning the dark recesses between stacks of crates. The hush was oppressive, every footstep echoing. Bingo let out a small whine, tugging gently at the leash, drawing them toward an alcove near the building's side. Heart pounding, Lily followed the dog's lead. Then she heard something, a scrape of metal, swiftly muffled. She motioned for Suarez to circle around from the opposite side. Bingo pressed closer to Lily's leg, as if bracing for whatever lurked beyond the stacked crates. Peering around the corner, Lily saw a figure hunched over a toolbox, back turned. The man wore tattered jeans and leaned heavily on his right leg, which seemed stiff. Her breath caught. This could be him. She cleared her throat. "Hollowdale Police," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'd like to talk to you." The man jolted upright, turning halfway. His features were half hidden by shadows, but Lily noticed deep lines across his forehead and a jittery posture. He gripped a crowbar. For a split second, the world seemed to hang still. Then the man bolted, limping rapidly toward the far end of the warehouse. Lily cursed under her breath, sprinting after him as Bingo lunged forward. She heard Suarez shout from the other side, but the suspect wove around a forklift, vanishing into darkness. Lily's heartbeat hammered in her ears. She refused to let him slip away. Dodging half-broken pallets, she followed his footsteps, Bingo straining at the leash. Dim overhead lights cast shifting shadows, making it hard to track movement. Suddenly, the man emerged from behind a tall crate, swinging the crowbar at Lily. She gasped, jumping back. Metal whooshed past her face. Bingo snarled, lunging forward. The man recoiled in fear at the dog's aggression, giving Lily enough time to regain her balance. "Stop!" she yelled. "Drop your weapon!" But he swung again, and Bingo's teeth bared as he snapped at the crowbar. A single bolt clattered across the concrete. Lily heard Suarez's footsteps approaching from behind. Then everything happened at once. The suspect threw the crowbar, hitting the concrete floor with a clang. He stumbled, collapsing against the crate. Lily and Suarez closed in, guns drawn, commanding him to lie flat. Bingo stood by Lily's side, chest heaving, gaze never leaving the man. The suspect moaned, holding his leg as if in pain. Under flickering overhead lamps, Lily finally saw his face. Hollow cheeks, pockmarks, and watery blue eyes filled with desperation. "Are you Norman Fitch?" Lily demanded, though her breath still caught in her throat. "What do you know about Hollowdale Park?" He coughed, a raspy laugh. "Fitch died years ago," he sneered. "I'm nobody." Suarez yanked his arms behind him, snapping on cuffs. "We'll see about that at the station." She patted him down. No ID, no wallet, just a battered phone that offered no immediate answers. Lily felt her limbs shaking. She clipped Bingo's leash to her belt, grateful for the dog's steadfast presence. Outside, a police cruiser's lights bathed the loading dock in flashes of blue and red. They hauled the limping man toward the car, he muttering curses all the while. The ride back was tense. The suspect refused to speak except to hurl insults at the officers. Bingo stayed close to Lily in the back seat. Once they reached the station, Suarez escorted the man into an interrogation room. Lily lingered a moment in the corridor, pressing a hand to her racing heart. Was this the killer they'd been hunting, or just a desperate vagrant rummaging through warehouses? She couldn't decide which possibility unnerved her more. Over the next hour, the suspect offered no confession. He gave a false name, then another. His only consistent statement was that he had no idea who Norman Fitch was. Lily and Suarez took turns questioning him gently and firmly, showing him the missing person photos, referencing the oak. His blank eyes flickered ever so slightly at each mention of the park, yet he refused to answer. Meanwhile, Wilcox ran a rapid database check on his fingerprints. Lily paced the corridor, Bingo at her side. When Wilcox emerged, he wore a frustrated scowl. "We've got a match on petty theft charges, but no official link to Fitch. This is Glenn Hubbard, age 51, no fixed address." The disappointment washed over Lily like a cold wave. So this wasn't Norman Fitch at all. Another dead end. "Keep him overnight," Suarez said through clenched teeth. "He might be connected, might know something. Let's see if we can squeeze out a clue." Lily sighed, her hopes deflating. As she walked Bingo back to her desk, she wondered if the real Norman Fitch was still out there, mocking them from the shadows. Judging by Bingo's tense posture, he sensed her frustration too. Tomorrow, they would try again. They had to. The mass grave under that oak demanded answers, and the dog who'd uncovered it deserved nothing less than the truth. For the sake of each unknown victim, Lily silently vowed she wouldn't stop until the secrets of Hollowdale Park were finally laid bare. The morning after Glenn Hubbard's arrest dawned with a curious hush inside the Hollowdale precinct. Despite having a suspect in custody, Lily Patterson sensed that everyone remained on edge. Glenn's lack of cooperation had sparked rumors among the force. Some claimed he knew more than he let on. Others believed he was a mere drifter unlucky enough to arouse suspicion. Only one fact was certain. None of his answers had led them closer to Norman Fitch or the truth about the bodies beneath the oak. Lily arrived early with Bingo at her side, determined to keep pressing forward. Overnight, Detective Suarez had arranged for a more thorough interrogation of Hubbard. Lily stood by the door of the small windowless room as Suarez questioned him under the stark fluorescent light. A recording device on the metal table captured every syllable. Hubbard leaned back in his chair, wearing the same tattered jacket from his arrest. His eyes flicked around, avoiding direct contact with Suarez. With each question, "Where were you on these nights?" Or, "Have you ever visited Hollowdale Park?" He offered only grunts, sneers, or shrugs. After nearly an hour, Suarez paused the session to regroup in the hallway. "He's stonewalling," she told Lily. "But there's something in his eyes whenever I mention the park. A flicker of fear or guilt. Hard to say which." Lily nodded. He recognized the name Hollowdale, that's for sure. Behind them, Bingo let out a tiny whine, as though echoing their frustration. Lily knelt to stroke his ears. "We need more than this," she muttered. They returned to the interrogation room for a final attempt that morning. Suarez approached with a calmer tone, explaining how serious the situation was. "You're looking at charges of assault, trespassing, possession of a deadly weapon," she told Hubbard. "We can't ignore that you match partial descriptions from old police logs, but if you know anything at all about what's been happening in that park, you need to speak up." The suspect's jaw tightened. At last, he murmured, "I'm no killer, lady." That was all. He refused to elaborate. Suarez ended the interrogation visibly tense. Hubbard was led away, scowling at Lily and Bingo as he shuffled down the corridor in handcuffs. Back at her desk, Lily powered through the stale remnants of a donut and sipped coffee that tasted faintly burnt. Her mind refused to let go of the possibility that Hubbard and Fitch might be connected. She revisited the records. The limp, the mention of vandalism near the oak, and those unsettling nights when someone prowled the park. If Hubbard was only a thief or a drifter, why avoid every question with such hostility? She considered whether fear might keep him silent. Perhaps if there was a darker figure behind all this, Hubbard wanted no part in betraying him. Detective Suarez joined Lily and Sergeant Wilcox at a long table piled with the latest forensic reports. The team had confirmed that at least 7 bodies lay under or near the oak, each belonging to a missing individual spanning over 15 years. Of those 7, only 3 were positively identified. The others required further DNA comparisons. "We've reached out to families in 4 different counties," Wilcox said, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Calls keep coming in from people who think their loved ones might be under that tree. It's overwhelming." Lily set a folder aside and glanced at Bingo, who had curled up beneath the table. His ears perked whenever the oak was mentioned. "We must not lose focus," she said. "We have a suspect who might know something, but we can't rely on him. We need a plan to systematically find Norman Fitch or any other leads tied to those older sightings." Suarez nodded. "Agreed. I'll cross-reference every file with the times caretaker Crane noticed fresh soil. If Fitch worked as a handyman, maybe someone paid him to do yard work or odd jobs. There could be receipts, phone numbers, anything to trace him." While Suarez pored over logs, Lily volunteered to revisit the trailer park, hoping to uncover some link to Fitch's movements after he disappeared. She felt an odd certainty that the old neighborhood still held unspoken truths, as though the shabby lots and sagging structures might whisper secrets if asked the right questions. She clipped Bingo's leash to her belt, double-checked her sidearm, and nodded to Wilcox before heading out. The trailer park looked as bleak as before, all warped metal walls and patchy grass. Yet Lily walked methodically from door to door, flashing her badge at each occupant, politely asking if they recognized Norman Fitch's photograph. Some said no, some claimed ignorance, and a few pointed at a battered photo pinned to a bulletin board in the tiny community center. Lily lingered there, studying a collage of old snapshots. There, in the background of one shot from a barbecue, stood a tall man who resembled Fitch, leaning slightly to one side. She peered closer. He stood next to a middle-aged woman wearing a floral dress. Though the snapshot was grainy, Lily thought the woman's face suggested affection or trust. A caretaker for the community center wandered by, curious about her interest in the photo. "That was a get-together ages ago," he explained. "Hardly anyone from back then still lives here. Guy might have been Marla Jacobs' friend." Lily jotted down the name quickly. "Does Marla still live around here?" The caretaker shook his head. "Nah, she moved out maybe 6 or 7 years back. Heard she's over in Pinewood Village." Lily's pulse flickered. Pinewood Village was a modest apartment complex about 2 miles from the park. That was closer than she'd expected. She thanked the caretaker, then crouched to scratch Bingo's neck. "We have a new lead," she whispered. "Let's hope this one doesn't vanish." Driving to Pinewood Village took only 10 minutes. It was a neat array of 2-story buildings painted in pastel shades with tidy lawns and children's toys scattered about. Lily asked a few residents about Marla Jacobs until she found an apartment number on the 2nd floor. An older woman opened the door wearing thick glasses and a startled expression. "Marla Jacobs?" Lily asked gently. She introduced herself, then extended Norman Fitch's photo. Marla's eyes widened, recognition sparking behind the lenses. "That's Norman," she said. "Haven't seen him in years." Her gaze slid to Bingo and she managed a faint smile. "He used to talk about dogs a lot, tried to befriend the strays around here." Lily's heart thumped. "Do you remember when you last saw him?" Marla exhaled. "He came by a few months after I moved here, looking tired and worried. He asked to sleep on my couch for a night or two. Then he left, said he had business to finish near the park. I never heard from him again." Lily tried not to let her eagerness show too plainly. "Did he say what that business was, or mention anyone else?" Marla's brows knitted. "He was cagey. I remember him muttering something about someone owing him money, or some arrangement he couldn't get out of. He seemed scared." Lily recalled the limp, the talk of disturbed earth. Could Fitch have been an accomplice, or even a victim? "Do you have any contact information?" she pressed. Marla shook her head. "He never owned a phone. Everything about him was hush-hush." Another dead end, perhaps, but Marla added one last detail. "Norman said, if anything happens, they'll never find me, 'cause they don't dig deep enough." I thought he was just rambling. Now I'm not sure. A chill ran through Lily. She thanked Marla and left, Bingo trotting beside her, as though he sensed her flurry of thoughts. Driving back, Lily replayed Marla's words. If Norman believed people didn't dig deep enough, he might have known exactly how bodies were hidden, or maybe he was in so far he thought no one would dare look. Lily glanced at Bingo in the passenger seat. "But someone did look, didn't he?" she murmured. When she returned to the station, Detective Suarez and Wilcox pounced on the new information. If Fitch had a partner, someone more dominant, maybe Fitch was coerced into helping, Suarez proposed. Then again, maybe Fitch is the mastermind, spooked after some deal turned sour. Lily set the notes on the table. Marla described him as frightened, like he was in over his head. That suggests he wasn't the one calling the shots. Wilcox rubbed his temples. But who's the puppet master then? Another old face from the trailer park? Or somebody with stronger ties to that land? They decided to widen their net, creating a new suspect board for potential associates. As the night fell, Lily realized her eyes burned from reading. She forced herself to take Bingo for a brief walk outside the station. The dog gazed up at her as they circled the building, as though reminding her not to lose hope. She found herself whispering, "We'll find them. We'll stop this." She meant the faceless killer who lurked behind every clue, the unknown threat that had turned Hollowdale Park into a graveyard. Bingo's tail wagged softly, as if he understood. Back inside, Lily spotted Glenn Hubbard in a holding cell. He glared through the bars, jaw set. She thought about trying to pry more information out of him, but exhaustion held her back. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and with it, another round of questions. For the moment, her mind replayed Marla's recollection of Norman's words about burying secrets. Who truly orchestrated these burials, and how many more unknown bodies might still lie beneath the oak? Before driving home, Lily paused by her desk to gather the files. Sergeant Wilcox offered a nod of solidarity, while Suarez studied a map pinned to the wall, marking potential suspect addresses. The weight of the case pressed down on them all. Yet Lily took a measure of comfort in Bingo's quiet devotion. In a world where darkness reigned just below the surface, perhaps the dog's unwavering faith shone like a small, vital light. Gripping her notes, Lily whispered one last promise to herself. No matter how twisted the trail, she would keep following until the person, or people, behind these crimes faced the justice they had so long evaded. In the crisp dawn that followed Lily's unsettling discoveries, a tension-fueled calm settled over the Hollowdale Police Department. Officers greeted each other with subdued nods, voices hushed as though unwilling to disturb the precarious hush that had taken root. Detective Suarez was already stationed in front of the suspect board, adding 3 new names gleaned from late-night interviews. Each name was a faint possibility, people once rumored to move through the park's edges, silent shapes in the gloom. Lily paused to run her eyes across the photos, memorizing every line of each suspect's face. Then her gaze shifted to Bingo, who sat patiently by her desk, tail drumming the floor in slow, gentle beats, as if encouraging her to press on. While the department wrestled with limited evidence, Lily resolved to revisit old leads she feared might have been discounted too soon. She wanted to talk again with caretaker Lionel Crane, who'd described those strange nighttime disturbances decades ago. Perhaps under closer questioning, he could recall a detail that pointed to how Norman Fitch or someone else had walked freely among the oak's thick roots. The unearthed bodies haunted Lily's thoughts. Every time she pictured that swirl of bones in the damp earth, she felt a renewed urgency. How many families prayed for closure while the killer roamed free? Just after 8, Lily found Crane seated in the precinct's modest waiting area. His knee bounced with restless energy, and the lines on his weathered face deepened when she approached. "Thank you for coming back," Lily said, gesturing for him to follow her to a quieter corner near the interview rooms. Bingo trotted behind, capturing Crane's attention. "That your dog?" he asked, voice cracking. Lily nodded. "He's been helping us more than you might imagine." Crane shot Bingo a puzzled glance but shrugged, as if resigning himself to the bizarre reality of a dog assisting the police. They settled in an interview room, though Lily tried to maintain a friendlier atmosphere than the usual interrogation. Crane sipped from a paper cup of water, eyes darting from Lily to the small camera overhead. She opened a folder containing photos of the park from different eras. "Mr. Crane, you worked nights for so long. Did you ever see anyone in a ball cap or hoodie? Maybe someone who walked with a limp?" He frowned. "I told you, sometimes I saw shapes but couldn't be sure. Back then we didn't have fancy lights or night patrols. If I heard rustling, I assumed it was teenagers." Lily gently placed a photograph of Norman Fitch on the table, the one gleaned from the trailer park barbecue snapshot. "Does this man look familiar?" Crane squinted. "Can't say for certain. Could be. He reminds me of someone who used to come by now and then, always near the oak. Tall, yes, maybe favoring one leg, but it's too fuzzy in my memory." Lily accepted the meager response without pressing too hard. She showed him images of Glenn Hubbard next, though his refusal to confirm or deny any connection left them stuck. "Never saw him," Crane muttered, shaking his head. The interview seemed fruitless until Lily asked a final question. "Mr. Crane, in all those years, did you ever find a shovel or digging tools left behind?" This time he paused, brow knitting. "A couple times, yeah. Rusty old spades, once a heavier shovel. Always figured someone was burying trash or squirrels." Lily's heart rate ticked upward. "Do you remember anything else about those items?" Crane scratched his chin. "Not much. One shovel had green paint on the handle. Another had a broken handle. I turned them in to Lost and Found. Don't recall what happened after." Though the specifics were hazy, Lily felt a flicker of hope. If any old logs or Lost and Found records still existed, they might reveal a date or a name. She thanked Crane for his cooperation, then escorted him out. Detective Suarez hovered in the hallway, listening. "Might be worth checking the city's old inventory of found items, though that's a long shot," she said. Lily agreed. "A single label or partial print could be the crack we need." They headed to the records department, a cramped annex in the station's basement where years of dust and disorganized files awaited. Lily let Bingo roam near the door, while she and Suarez donned gloves and began rummaging through battered cardboard boxes. Stale air filled Lily's lungs, and she forced herself to keep scanning file after file, mindful that the key to unraveling a decades-long string of murders could be hidden amid the mundane. For an hour, they turned pages, flipping through drab forms. Then Suarez let out a low whistle, extracting a manila envelope with park items scrawled on the front. Inside lay typed sheets listing everything turned in at Hollowdale's Lost and Found from about 15 to 20 years earlier. Among the random odds and ends, keys, wallets, children's toys were references to 3 separate shovels. One matched Crane's recollection: green paint, discovered in early summer nearly 16 years ago. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she read the date. The note claimed the shovel was found in June of that year. She cross-referenced with a missing person case from around that time, a traveling nurse who had vanished on a June evening, last spotted taking a shortcut through the park. This lines up with one of our victims, Lily breathed. The list offered no name of the person who turned the shovel in, nor any mention of the item's final disposition. Still, it was progress. Emerging from the records department, Lily let Bingo sniff the envelope. He studied it briefly, then nuzzled her knee as though he, too, sensed the significance. The 2 detectives found Wilcox upstairs, briefing him on the battered shovel link. "We need to revisit that missing nurse's file," Lily urged. "Check acquaintances, daily routines, all that. Maybe she encountered Norman Fitch or someone else near the Oak." Wilcox scribbled notes furiously. Her name was Clarice Olson. The investigating officer at the time was Harris, I think. He's retired now, but maybe we can track him down. Lily nodded. Every new piece felt like another stone placed in a precarious tower. She just prayed it wouldn't collapse. While Wilcox made calls, Suarez left to question the property manager from that long-ago lost and found record. Lily retreated to her desk, Bingo at her feet. She felt the weight of the days piling up, a swirl of missing persons, half-clues, silent suspects. The entire city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final unmasking of the predator. Lily closed her eyes briefly, remembering the fresh tear stains on that young mother's cheeks who came in earlier, desperate to learn if her vanished brother might be among the bodies. The heartbreak was crushing, but Lily hardened her resolve. She had no choice but to keep fighting. By mid-afternoon, a grim hush settled again as new forensic results arrived. They identified 2 more sets of remains. One belonged to a woman reported missing in 2012, the other to a man last seen in 2007. The city's sense of safety eroded further with each announcement. Mayor Randall called for an emergency meeting demanding faster progress. Television reporters camped outside the station, broadcasting sensational sound bites about a decades-long murder spree. Lily tried to tune out the clamor, focusing instead on the small leads that she and Suarez had coaxed from decades of dusty records. Late in the day, Suarez returned with a meager update. The property manager from years ago barely remembered anything about shovels. No receipts, no log details. Disappointed but undeterred, Lily insisted they keep following the caretaker's tip. Check any security footage from local hardware stores around that time, she suggested, though they both knew how unlikely it was that old footage still existed. We'll do the same for more recent years. If someone's burying bodies, they probably purchased tools. Night approached, but Lily felt a spark of momentum. She refused to go home until she revisited Clarice Olson's missing person file. She, Bingo, and Suarez pored over the details in a quiet corner of the station. Clarice worked alternating shifts at a hospice, loved reading mystery novels, and took solitary walks to clear her head. The final notation mentioned an unidentified man glimpsed following her one evening. The witness, a neighbor, recalled him having a distinctive limp. Lily's heart thudded, another reference to that limp, but no official suspect had been named. The clock inched past 10 by the time Lily and Suarez finished cross-checking the nurse's case. Suarez stood, stretching her stiff limbs. We'll regroup tomorrow. We must be missing one thread that ties Fitch or whoever else to these victims. Lily nodded, exhaustion pressing down. As she clipped Bingo's leash, she dared to hope that each incremental insight would one day align, revealing the killer's face. For now, they retreated into the warm gloom of the parking lot. Bingo hopped into Lily's car with his usual composure, offering a quiet companionship that asked for nothing but trust. Lily settled behind the wheel, convinced that tomorrow might bring a sharper clarity, a sign they were nearing the final confrontation with whoever had turned the park into a tomb. The station's lights shrank in her rearview mirror as she pulled away. The hush enveloping Hollowdale tonight felt uneasy, like the pause before thunder. Lily gripped the steering wheel, resolved not to let fear or exhaustion hinder her. And Bingo, calm beside her, embodied that unwavering dedication she needed most. Both knew the city awaited an answer. Together, they intended to find it. In the early hours of the next day, Lily Patterson found herself wide awake well before the alarm sounded. She had tossed and turned all night, her thoughts locked on the cryptic mention caretaker Crane had made regarding painted shovels in the timeline that aligned with one of the vanished victims. Despite her exhaustion, she sensed that each puzzle piece was inching closer to forming a recognizable picture. In a matter of days, the entire Hollowdale community had been forced to confront the unthinkable. A killer or killers had quietly disposed of victims under the old oak for years. The fact that Bingo, a stray dog with an uncanny intuition, had revealed the truth only seemed to amplify the collective dread. As Lily dressed, her phone buzzed with a message from Detective Suarez, who insisted they reconvene at the precinct earlier than planned. Lily left a note of apology for her neighbors. She had sworn she heard them complaining about the unrelenting footsteps from her pacing, and hurried outside, where Bingo waited in the gloom near the car. She opened the passenger door and Bingo hopped in with a gentle wag of his tail, as though reminding her that whatever the day might bring, they would face it together. By the time Lily reached the station, the sun had barely risen, but she found Suarez and Sergeant Wilcox already in the conference room. A faint odor of stale coffee clung to the air. Wilcox was hunched over a binder of property transactions, flipping pages so quickly that the paper edges blurred. Suarez stood by the whiteboard, reorganizing the victim timeline with new color-coded markers. Lily noted the dark circles under both their eyes, a reflection of her own mounting fatigue. At the center of the board was the name Norman Fitch, circled in red, with arrows linking him to dates of suspicious activity. Clusters of sticky notes fanned outward, referencing caretaker Crane's remarks and the lost and found shovel records. "I pulled some old real estate deeds," Wilcox said the instant Lily stepped inside. Turns out, decades back, that corner of the park wasn't strictly public property. Part of it belonged to a private estate that was donated to the city under odd conditions. He lifted his gaze. "We might have a family name to investigate. The Benningtons. They once owned farmland that included the park's Oak Grove, but the official handover papers are patchy. If Fitch had ties to the Bennington family, maybe as a laborer or caretaker, he might have gained easy access to that land." Bingo settled himself near Lily's feet as she scanned the documents. Indeed, the Bennington name surfaced multiple times in old city filings, some going back to the late 1970s. A single black and white photograph showed the patriarch, Randolph Bennington, standing beside a fence near the oak, a faint scowl on his lips. The caption declared that he had donated part of his property to the city with the stated goal of preserving Hollowdale's natural beauty. Lily's brows furrowed. If the land donation was incomplete or poorly managed, maybe the original owners still felt a sense of control over it. It could be that Fitch or someone else was tasked with certain duties, like burying secrets. Suarez nodded grimly, tapping her pen on the board. "Let's look into any Bennington heirs or close associates still living in the area. We can't assume Fitch was working alone. For all we know, Fitch is just one piece of this operation." The notion that more than one person could be orchestrating these burials sent a chill through the room. Wilcox exhaled slowly. "I'll contact the county clerk's office. If any Bennington family members remain, we'll find them." Meanwhile, Lily felt Bingo shift against her ankle, as though bracing himself for another plunge into the unknown. Before diving deeper, Lily suggested they reassess Glenn Hubbard, the drifter who had attacked her and Suarez in the warehouse. Though Hubbard insisted he had never heard of Fitch, something in his silence hinted otherwise. During a quick debrief, the station's psychologist offered a theory. If Hubbard feared a more dangerous partner, someone capable of multiple murders, he might feign ignorance rather than risk retaliation. Lily felt an urgent need to break Hubbard's silence. She approached the holding cell, Bingo at her heel, and stared at the sullen figure behind the bars. His shoulders were tense, his eyes flicking around like a trapped animal. "We found a lead," Lily told him, her voice echoing off the cinder block walls. "We know you didn't do all this alone, but if you're covering for someone, that person may have no trouble disposing of you next." Hubbard spat on the floor, though his gaze quavered. "I'm no snitch," he muttered, but the slight tremor in his tone betrayed an undercurrent of fear. Lily left him with a stern reminder that cooperating might be his only path to safety. As she departed, Bingo glanced over his shoulder at Hubbard, who quickly turned away. Late that morning, Wilcox received a call back from the county clerk's office with partial records on the Bennington lineage. They revealed that Randolph Bennington died years ago, leaving behind a widow who later remarried and moved out of state. No direct heirs were listed, but there was a mention of a nephew named Wesley Bennington Jones. He was last known to reside in a remote cabin near the county line, a property once used for storing farming equipment. The phone number on file was disconnected. With few other leads promising more immediate results, Lily and Suarez decided to make the trip. The drive took them beyond Hollowdale's suburban sprawl, onto winding roads flanked by tall pines. The early afternoon sun glimmered through the canopy, but Lily couldn't shake a sense of unease. Bingo, uncharacteristically restless in the back seat, kept shifting his weight and letting out small, questioning sounds. "I know, boy," Lily murmured, patting his flank at a stop sign. "I don't like this either." When they finally arrived, the place looked deserted, an old cabin with sagging porch steps and peeling paint. No cars, no smoke in the chimney, just a faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Undeterred, Lily and Suarez stepped onto the porch. Each board creaked ominously underfoot. They knocked, called out, and waited. Silence. Lily glanced at Suarez, who nodded. They circled around back, scanning for signs of recent activity. A trampled patch of grass, footprints in the mud. Bingo trailed them intently, pausing at intervals to sniff the air. Then he let out a sudden bark, leading them toward a warped barn door partially hidden behind shrubs. The barn was locked, but Suarez used a crowbar from the trunk of their patrol car to pry it open. Inside, the stale odor of rotting hay mingled with a chemical tang. Dust motes swirled in beams of slanted sunlight. Old crates and farm implements lay scattered about. Lily's flashlight beam caught an object leaning in the corner, a long shovel with a chipped green-painted handle. Her heartbeat jolted. This matched caretaker Crane's memory. She and Suarez exchanged a charged look. "We need to see what else is here." As they pushed deeper into the barn, Bingo began to whine, pawing at the ground near a stack of boxes. Suarez knelt, rummaging carefully until she uncovered a folded tarpaulin. When she pulled it aside, Lily saw a battered metal chest. Her stomach twisted. Hands trembling, Lily crouched to open the chest, half expecting to find more bones. Instead, inside lay yellowed photographs, old letters, and a faded piece of cloth with peculiar stains. The photos depicted the oak in Hollowdale Park at various times of day, some featuring a figure standing in the distance, tall, posture uneven, face always turned away from the camera. There were also images of an older man Lily guessed was Randolph Bennington, and next to him, a younger man with a slight stoop. Suarez shone her flashlight on a letter addressed to Wesley. In cramped handwriting, it referred to family duties and secret obligations. The final lines made Lily's scalp prickle. No one will ever look under that old tree. Bury each mistake, and we shall remain above suspicion. We do what must be done. The letter was signed with initials R.B. Lily stared at Suarez, her pulse pounding. The meaning was stark. If Wesley carried on his uncle's twisted tradition, he might be the real orchestrator of the park burials, and Norman Fitch could have been his underling or accomplice. Before Lily could speak, Bingo stiffened, ears pinned back. A soft click came from behind them, and both detectives whipped around. A figure stood in the barn's doorway, face half concealed by shadow, one hand gripping a shotgun. Fear surged in Lily's chest, but she kept her voice calm. "Hollowdale Police. Are you Wesley Bennington Jones?" The man stepped forward into a shaft of dusty light, revealing a deep scowl and an angular face etched with tension. His lips parted in a sneer. "This is private property," he hissed. "You have no right here." Lily's heart hammered. She could sense the darkness that clung to this place, an echo of the nightmarish events that shaped every piece of evidence. Suarez glanced at Lily, hand drifting toward her holster. Bingo lowered himself, hackles raised as though sensing the confrontation. The barn, silent but for the rasp of their breaths, teetered on the brink of violence. In that charged moment, Lily realized how close they were to unmasking the twisted legacy that had cursed Hollowdale Park for so long. One wrong move, and it could all shatter. A chill coursed through Lily Patterson as she faced Wesley Bennington Jones in the dim barn. Dust motes glinted in the slanted light, reflecting off the metal of the shotgun he held. Detective Suarez, at Lily's side, rested a steady hand near her holster, prepared to draw if this standoff escalated. Bingo crouched low, silent but tense, sensing every flicker of hostility. For a moment, no one spoke, the only sound their cautious breathing amid the stale smell of rotting hay. "We have reason to believe you're connected to multiple homicides," Lily said, voice firm though her heart pounded. "Items found on this property match evidence from Hollowdale Park. We need you to put down the weapon and come with us." Her eyes flicked toward the battered metal chest on the ground, where they'd discovered letters hinting at a family tradition of burying mistakes. Wesley's jaw clenched. Sweat gleamed on his brow. He raised the shotgun a fraction, aiming it toward Lily and Suarez. "You have no idea what you're meddling in," he growled, a tremor beneath his anger. "It goes far back, long before any of us." Lily felt a tightness grip her chest. It was one thing to suspect a killer. It was another to realize he believed himself part of some larger inherited mission. "Put the gun down," Suarez warned, stepping sideways to divide his focus. The detective's voice carried the authority of years on the force. "No one else needs to get hurt." Wesley's gaze flicked to the tarpaulin lying nearby, then to Bingo, who bared teeth in a silent snarl. "This won't go the way you think," Wesley muttered. His eyes brimmed with a strange mix of fury and resignation. In the tense heartbeat that followed, Lily feared he might squeeze the trigger. Suarez began to edge closer, hand fully on her weapon's grip now. That motion seemed to jolt Wesley out of his paralysis. With a sudden cry, he swung the shotgun, the barrel scraping a crate and sending a cascade of splinters to the floor. Lily ducked, adrenaline surging. Bingo lunged forward, barking sharply as if to distract Wesley. In that split second, Suarez seized her chance. Her gun flashed from the holster, and she fired a warning shot that echoed through the barn's rafters. Wesley froze, the shotgun clattering from his grasp to the dirt floor. For a moment, the aftermath hung suspended. The gun's clamor receded into the dusty corners, and Wesley's eyes widened in shock. Lily and Suarez rushed in, pinning his arms behind his back. He gasped, half in anger, half in pain, as the handcuffs locked. Bingo hovered near Lily, chest heaving, ears still flat from the adrenaline. Through clenched teeth, Wesley spat. "You'll never understand what this family's done. I was just the last one left to keep it going. My uncle promised no one would ever dig there." His words sent a cold shiver down Lily's spine. If the Bennington family had orchestrated clandestine burials for decades, Norman Fitch might only be a cog in a larger wheel. They marched Wesley outside into the piercing daylight. He squinted, stumbling over the uneven ground while Suarez read him his rights. Lily radioed for backup, detailing an arrest at the property and the urgent need to search every inch of the premises. Within minutes, 2 squad cars arrived, lights flashing against the tree line. Officers carefully stowed Wesley in the back of one cruiser. He stared at them with pure contempt, muttering about how meddling police had destroyed something ancient and unbreakable. Lily's relief mingled with dread. The mention of an ancient tradition reeked of twisted legacy. But at least this man was in custody now, no longer free to add more bodies to the secrets buried under the oak. Detective Suarez and Lily led Bingo back into the barn, joined by forensic techs who quickly descended upon the evidence. Photographs, letters, and the ominous green-painted shovel were tagged and sealed in bags. One of the techs flipped through the old letters and photos in grim fascination. "Looks like this dates back decades. Could be a gold mine of DNA or matching fibers," she said. Lily nodded, swallowing hard. Each item might link the Bennington family to victims who had long vanished, including those who ended up beneath that ancient oak. The crowd of uniformed officers spread out, searching the grounds around the cabin. Not far from the barn, a narrow path led into a thicket of trees. Lily followed it while Bingo paced beside her, sniffing occasionally at the undergrowth. Halfway down the trail, they stumbled upon a small clearing scattered with rocks arranged in vague patterns, as though someone had tried to mark unmarked graves here too. A jolt of horror crawled up Lily's spine. Forensic teams would have to examine the entire property. The scale of what Wesley had carried on from his uncle could be larger than they ever imagined. Back at the precinct, Wesley refused to utter another word without a lawyer present. Even so, his earlier statements about his family's legacy and never digging deep enough lingered in the minds of Lily, Suarez, and Sergeant Wilcox as they pored over the confiscated letters. Among the spidery script, they found references to our friend Fitch, instructions to assist him in disposing of certain problems at the park, and stern warnings to maintain the bloodline's privacy. The final line in one note froze Lily's blood. "We only bury what must be buried. Anyone who interferes is a threat to our lineage." By now, news of Wesley's arrest had swept the station. Officers whispered about how the once respected Bennington name, associated with charitable donations to the city, had concealed a murderer's secret. Lily wondered if Norman Fitch had tried to break free from this arrangement or if he'd sunk deeper into complicity. If Fitch was still alive, he might be the lone figure who knew everything about each burial. "We have to find him," Lily murmured, scanning old documents for clues to his whereabouts. A single note suggested that Fitch had a tendency to drift, but he returned to Hollowdale whenever the family summoned him. Night fell before they made any significant headway. More calls poured in from anxious relatives of missing persons who worried the latest arrest might confirm their worst fears. On social media, locals hounded the police for updates, demanding to know how such evil could lurk unnoticed all these years. Lily's frustration spiked. Even with Wesley behind bars, questions abounded. Did Wesley kill anyone personally, or did he manage a network of accomplices? Was Fitch just another pawn? As the moon rose over a silent station, Detective Suarez finally slid a piece of paper to Lily. "I dug deeper into Norman Fitch's possible connections," she said. "He had a distant cousin who mentioned an abandoned motel where Norman sometimes crashed. It's north of the city, near the old highway. Maybe it's nothing, but we have no other leads on him." Lily stared at the address, a faint thrill of anticipation cutting through her fatigue. If he's still around, he might hide there. They agreed to check it out first thing in the morning, hoping Fitch's cowardice or desperation might make him linger. Before heading home, Lily spent a quiet moment near Bingo's makeshift bed in the station corridor. She knelt, running her hand over his soft ears. "We're so close, boy," she whispered, recalling Wesley's venomous glare and the eerie barn littered with photographs. Bingo nuzzled her hand as if in agreement. Even now, she couldn't forget how Bingo's instinct had steered them to that corner beneath the oak, the fateful start of uncovering the city's darkest secret. Lily took a deep breath, letting the dog's presence soothe her. "I promise," she told him softly. "We'll make sure justice is done." Outside, a gust ruffled the station's flag. Hollowdale felt different now, bracing itself for the truths that would soon emerge. The unraveling of the Bennington legacy might only be the beginning. Lily sat behind the wheel, Bingo beside her, contemplating the next day's mission. They would hunt for Norman Fitch with every resource available. And if he held the final key to understanding these murders, she intended to find him before he vanished like so many lost souls. With a flick of the ignition, she guided the car into the night, headlights cutting a pale swath through the darkness. The moon glowed high overhead, a silent witness to a city on the verge of unveiling horrors it never wished to face. But for Lily Patterson and her steadfast canine ally, there was no turning back. The final answers lay somewhere out there waiting to be claimed. In the gray light of early morning, Lily Patterson steered her unmarked police car toward the abandoned motel that might lead them to Norman Fitch. Detective Suarez sat beside her, quietly reviewing copies of mugshots and old property records. Bingo lay in the back, ears flicking as the vehicle rumbled over worn asphalt. The road stretched north of Hollowdale, past fields of tall grass and vacant storefronts, an area left behind when the new highway diverted traffic years earlier. Ahead, a sagging sign with missing letters came into view, spelling something like Sunrise Court. The single-story block of rooms looked forlorn and half reclaimed by nature. Weeds poked through cracked pavement and broken lights dangled from corroded poles. Lily rolled to a stop near the office, its windows boarded shut. A hush settled over them. Even the wind felt stagnant, as if the place itself held its breath. "Let's see if Fitch is lurking inside," Suarez said, a note of urgency beneath her calm. Lily nodded. They exited the car with Bingo trailing close. Drawing their flashlights, they approached the office door. The weathered wood rattled under Lily's knock, but no one answered. Peering through a gap in the boards, she caught a glimpse of overturned chairs and thick dust. She tried the handle. Locked. Suarez glanced around. "We'll check the rooms first." One by one, they walked the perimeter of the motel, the morning light still weak. Many doors stood ajar, revealing vandalized interiors, shattered lamps, stained mattresses, crumbling plaster. A few doors were locked tight, but the windows were often missing or broken, letting them shine flashlights into dank spaces. Bingo sniffed at thresholds, occasionally whining in puzzlement. Lily's pulse thudded. After the confrontation with Wesley Bennington Jones, the pressure to locate Fitch had reached a fever pitch. Either he was the final key to the entire twisted puzzle, or he was another puppet who might vanish unless they found him now. They reached room 12, whose door was shut, but unchained. When Lily carefully pushed it open, the hinges gave a protesting squeak. Inside, the air carried a stale odor of cigarette smoke and mildew. The narrow bed was unmade, a thin blanket bunched at the foot. On a small table, Lily spotted an empty soup can and a half-burned candle. A battered duffel bag slumped in the corner, and something about its rumpled shape suggested recent use. Bingo sniffed the air, letting out a single low bark as he stepped forward. Suarez covered the doorway while Lily crossed the room and unzipped the duffel. Inside lay a flannel shirt, ragged jeans, and a plastic bag of old toiletries. Tucked in a side pocket, she found a folded piece of paper. She carefully opened it, revealing a crude sketch of Hollowdale Park's oak tree. Next to the drawing were scrawled words, "Not safe. Must hide." Lily held her breath. Whoever wrote that message believed the oak no longer offered security. It had to be Fitch. Behind her, Bingo lifted his head, growling lightly at the far side of the room. A faint sound came from the adjoining bathroom, a rustling or scrape of movement. Lily's heart sped. She signaled to Suarez, who aimed her flashlight at the bathroom door. They edged forward, Bingo poised at Lily's side. "Hollowdale Police," Lily called. "If you're in there, come out slowly." For an instant, silence. Then the door inched open. A gaunt man with hollow cheeks and a ragged beard emerged. He leaned on the sink, his weight on one leg, the other trembling. Fear etched his every feature. He glanced at Lily's badge, then at Bingo, who stared back, hackles half raised. "Are you Norman Fitch?" Suarez asked, voice unwavering. The man swallowed, eyes flicking from side to side like a cornered animal. "Yes," he croaked. His voice, though barely audible, vibrated with dread. Lily felt a tremor of relief. After weeks of chasing shadows, they'd finally found the elusive figure at the heart of their case. But her relief sharpened into caution. "We need to talk about the burials in Hollowdale Park and your connection to Wesley Bennington Jones." At the mention of Wesley, Fitch sagged against the wall, covering his face with trembling hands. "They blame me for it all," he mumbled. "But I was forced to help. I never killed anyone on my own, never." Lily's pulse throbbed in her ears. "We have evidence that ties you to the park," she insisted, stepping closer. "Explain, before it's too late." Fitch slumped to the floor, hugging his knees, ignoring the filth. With each breath, he seemed to gather scraps of nerve. "Randolph started it," he rasped. "Wesley carried it on. They had money and power. They used that land for secrets. I did what they told me, or they'd have done worse. They threatened my sister. I swear I only dug the graves." Detective Suarez cut in. "And the victims? Did you witness any murders?" Fitch shook his head violently. "They never let me watch," he said, voice quavering. "I'd arrive at the oak after dark, bury what they left. Sometimes I'd see shapes like a body wrapped in cloth, but I didn't dare ask. They gave me money, told me to keep silent. If I refused, they said I'd end up under that tree next." His eyes brimmed with tears and Lily's stomach twisted. She had expected a hardened accomplice, but Fitch looked more like a terrified man whose complicity had become a life sentence. Bingo inched forward, sniffing at Fitch's shoulder before lowering himself, as though sensing the man's raw despair. Lily knelt, keeping her voice steady. "We've arrested Wesley. He's in custody now. You're not alone anymore. Tell us everything. Help us ensure no one else suffers this fate." A sob choked Fitch. "I can't undo the lives lost," he whispered, "but I can show you where they forced me to bury some who might still be missing. Not all were left at the oak. Randolph had another site near the orchard across town, some farmland that never got fully donated." A shock of dread struck Lily. This meant there could be more hidden victims. She exchanged a grim glance with Suarez. The detective radioed for immediate backup and forensics. Lily turned back to Fitch. "You have to cooperate fully," she said. "If you do, we'll consider your role, but you must tell the truth." Tears streaked the dirt on Fitch's face. "I will. I will." He rubbed his hands on his thighs in frantic movements, words tumbling out. "I've got a notebook in my bag. Dates, partial names. I kept track of each time they called me in, each time I had to dig." Lily's breath caught. That notebook might finally give the families the answers they deserved. Within the hour, more officers and forensics teams converged on the decrepit motel, loading Fitch into a cruiser. Suarez handled him with measured caution. He was both a suspect and a potential key witness. Lily watched as Bingo waited beside the car, tail lowered as though sensing the weight of what Fitch had confessed. Soon the entire site bustled with activity, crime scene tape fluttering in the wind. Lily and Suarez pored over Fitch's notebook. Its pencil scrawls documented multiple dates over 15 years, each entry hinting at a possible homicide. Some notes included cryptic references like woman from out of town, drifter near highway, or troublemaker caught snooping. The orchard location appeared several times, a place Lily now feared was a second graveyard. By late afternoon, Lily led the motorcade back into Hollowdale. Fitch agreed to guide them to the orchard, a neglected piece of farmland in the city's eastern outskirts. The terrain there was more overgrown than the park, rows of trees left to wither. As Lily parked, Bingo hopped out, sniffing the crisp air. Fitch, still trembling, stepped onto the dirt path, flanked by two uniformed officers. He pointed toward a cluster of gnarled trees. Beyond that fence. I dug there. Maybe 5 times, he murmured. Forensic teams began setting up lights and markers, repeating the grim routine they'd performed near the oak. While they worked, Lily stood beside Suarez, gazing across the orchard. The sun dangled low on the horizon, a sullen orb casting long shadows across the uneven ground. Bingo remained at Lily's side. In that hush, she pictured families waiting for word of loved ones, and felt a surge of empathy for Fitch, trapped in a cycle of threats and fear. No matter his regrets, he had abetted monstrous crimes. And yet, perhaps his cooperation would finally end this chain of horrors begun by the Benningtons. Lily knelt, stroking Bingo's fur as the first shovel pierced the earth. The orchard would yield its secret soon. All those souls, she whispered. Finally, they'll have names. Their families can have closure. Bingo nudged her hand gently, as though affirming the sense of relief that justice, though late, might still triumph. A few yards away, Fitch stood with bowed head, battered by guilt and a desperate hope that the truth might salvage something of his broken life. As darkness settled, Lily turned to see Sergeant Wilcox approaching, expression grave. "We've begun uncovering remains," he said. "At least 2 sets discovered already. Looks like Fitch was telling the truth." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. Another group of victims never claimed, never mourned, until now. She closed them briefly, letting relief and sorrow mingle, and then exhaled. Through it all, Bingo stayed close, the dog who started this entire investigation with his relentless digging. Though the revelations were harrowing, Lily felt certain that they were on the brink of giving the dead a voice. Despite the grim discoveries ahead, a sense of resolution hovered in the cold orchard air. Wesley would face trial, and Fitch's notebook would fill in the blanks. The darkness wrapped around the orchard, illuminated by forensic floodlights. Lily stood anchored by Bingo's presence and thought of all the hearts that had yearned for closure. Their dog's instincts had led them here, to the final pieces of a puzzle none had realized lay hidden so close to home. Now, finally, Hollowdale's darkest secret stood exposed under the harsh beam of truth. And in that stark light, the promise of justice glowed, an assurance that no more bodies would vanish into unmarked graves. The city, though shaken, could begin to heal, guided by the unwavering bravery of one determined officer and the stray who refused to let evil stay buried.